Hi everyone, welcome to another Love Oz YA interview. My name's Bianca, I'm the Communications Director here at Love Oz YA, and I'm so very excited to be chatting to Kate Armstrong all about Nightbirds, which was released very recently. How are you, Kate? Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and I'm doing really well. The sun is shining, it's a beautiful day.
Oh, that's great. In Perth, here it is raining and cold, so we're
Ah, that's too bad.
both ends of the spectrum. I love that. So for those who haven't yet picked up Nightbirds, can you tell us what it's about?
I'll do my best. This question somehow never gets easier, although I've been asked it many, many times. Okay. So Nightbirds is a 1920s tinted fantasy. It has a world with a prohibition, but it's not on booze, it's on magic. And there are a secret group of girls called Nightbirds who can gift someone their rare magic with a kiss for a price. They are their city's best kept secret. Their identities are hidden behind masks, and they're protected by the city's great houses, their most wealthy and influential families. And they're told that it's a privilege to be a nightbird and that they give their magic away to those who pay for it. And after a couple of seasons, they marry a great house lord and pass their magic on to the next generation. But all three of our nightbirds, as the story opens, are questioning the system for various reasons. And then, when a political plot threatens to reveal their identities and then threatens their lives, they're forced to question everything they think they know and start to wonder if the system that's supposed to protect them is actually a gilded cage.
Oh, that was beautifully done. And we've
Thank
been
you.
trying to set up this interview for a little while, so it has been a few weeks since I read it, but I just sank right back in into that story and that world. It's so evocative and lush. So thank you so much for that. That was wrapped it up so beautifully. And so
I
there's
landed it. Yes.
so good. And so there's so much going on in the novel, which we will get
Mm.
to. So I'm just wondering where like the initial inspiration came from. Like, how did it start?
It's a good question, and it's a funny answer. It's a two-part answer. When the idea for Nightbirds first came to me, I was hiking up a mountain in Montana, which is a very unlikely place to have the idea for this novel. But typically my ideas always start with an opening image. Don't know why. It's just the way it works. I don't make the rules. So I was hiking along and I had this image, really clear image in my head of this girl wearing a mask and she was about to kiss someone who had paid for the privilege. And I knew that she was giving him something, some kind of magic. And I was really interested in who is this girl? What is her story? In what is her world like in that she's willing to give this thing to someone for a price? But I was also interested in the scene itself, how it was as if the girl was giving power away to someone, but I felt like there was also a chance for her to claim some power in this exchange as well. I was really intrigued, but that was all I had. It felt lush and opulent and interesting, but I didn't know where it went from there. Fast forward a couple months, I was in New York City and I went to see a show called Sleep No More. And this is an amazing piece of theater. So there's no stage and audience. Basically, you go into this like 1930s style creepy hotel, and everyone is wearing masks and no one's allowed to talk. And you just roam around anywhere you want. It's like a real life choose your own adventure. And
My
the actors are
goodness.
essentially doing all the things they're doing around you. And sometimes they interact with the audience. They'll push someone up against a wall or they'll dance around you, and it's just so immersive and tactile, and I love the feeling of traveling back through time. So I was just very happy with the entire thing. I was smiling ear to ear. You could not tell because I was wearing a creepy mask, but I was so happy. And then at the end of the night, everyone ends up being ushered into this, what feels like a 1920s underground speakeasy. Everyone is in costume. There's a jazz singer. We're drinking absinthe cocktails. It's dimly lit. It's glittery. And I was standing there just like having the best night of my life. And suddenly I started thinking about that girl in a mask who was kissing the client. And I thought, what if in her world there was a 1920 style prohibition on magic? what happens of this thing that lives inside her is outlawed? What does that look like? What does that feel like? And yeah, I was off to the races from there.
Oh my God, all of that is so incredible. I feel like that's like another story in itself. Oh my God, that experience sounds incredible. Oh, I'd love to go
Oh,
to something
yes.
like that. Ah,
You
that's
should. I've been twice, and if you ever get a chance to go, I mean, just to be able to experience theater in that kind of immersive way. I have a history podcast called The Exploress, which basically the entire show, which was also conceived on that same evening, the
well
whole
done.
concept of the show is to make you feel like you're traveling back through time and to see what life
Mm.
was like for women in different eras and different places. So I love that feeling of being immersed in a different time or a different world. And I really, really wanted to do that for readers with Nightbirds.
Oh my, I was just gonna say like that same immersion definitely happens in the book. Like you're just instantly transported and yeah, it's incredibly done. So that makes a lot of sense that that is where it came from. I can really see that. And yeah, you definitely captured it in the novel. So that's absolutely incredible.
Mm.
Um, Okay, so yes, there's so much going on in the book. But one of the most important things, and one of my favorites as well, was the themes of feminism and female empowerment. So yeah, definitely one of the main themes in the book. Can you speak a little bit more to those themes and why it was so
Mm.
important to you to write them?
Yes. Thank you for noticing. I love to think of Nightbirds as a fiercely feminist fantasy because that's really what it is.
Hmm.
I was interested in writing a story about girls who were in a system. The girls grow up being told the system protects you, it values you and treasures you, and all you have to do is give your power away and follow the rules and be a good girl. And I was thinking a lot about myself as a teenage girl. I was thinking a lot about, I was a teacher, high school teacher for several years, and thinking about things my students had told me, all of the various frustrations of being a teenager, but specifically being a teenage girl. For those who have read the book already, I won't spoil anything, but all three girls have an experience in chapter one that I or one of my friends have had of being talked down to, of being touched in ways one did not ask to be touched by a strange and entitled man. Um, Being told, let the room enjoy you. This whole idea that your beauty is for other people, your agency is at other people's whims, and that essentially these girls who are being defined by what they can give and do for other people rather than who they are in themselves. And that was really important to me to talk about because I think the other piece of inspiration for Nightbirds that I was thinking about a lot is I'd been reading a lot about courtesans throughout history.
Mm.
So, a system in which certainly not only women, but in which many women have found themselves throughout history. And it's a position in which, like, a courtesan can claim a lot of power and money and influence depending on her time and place and her situation. But that system can also be very exploitative and dangerous and leave her very vulnerable. And I wanted to look at this system that the Nightbirds were in and to be able to see both sides of that coin. All three of the girls are struggling with different aspects of feeling like they're being told who they are, being told what to do. It is a sort of cage. And I think that many, many girls have the experience of feeling like they've been put into a box and told to be polite and told to smile and to make other people comfortable, that somehow that's their job. So Nightbirds became a book about girls questioning those systems and pushing back against them. I think as much as we like to think, I mean, things have changed much throughout history, and we like to think we're not living in a patriarchal world, but in so many ways we still are. And I wanted to tell a story that really had girls pushing back against that, who were finding strength in themselves and in their friendships and finding their own paths through the world. Basically, it's a story that asks, what if these characters stopped giving their power away and kept it for themselves? What could they be? What could they achieve? Yes, that was really important to me and
Yeah.
something that I kept in mind with every decision that I made.
Oh, that's fantastic. So powerful. Um, and so important. Yeah, and those issues are so universal. Speaking um as an Australian, you think this kind of 1920s American inspired fantasy, like you're not really gonna, you're just here for a fun ride. But there's so much, especially as a woman, that you can relate to on such a deep level that just makes it, um, yeah, just really relatable and hard hitting, but so wonderful and powerful. So, yeah, thank you for including those. It was really, really powerful to read. It's really enjoyable. And yeah, definitely couldn't do it without the girls who are all such fantastic characters. So we follow three, but there's a couple more whose
Yeah,
perspectives
there
that we
there are
do
a
get.
few.
So
Yep.
yeah, don't want to spoil too much, but there's definitely three, and all three characters and their voices were so distinct and unique, and it was just so wonderfully done. I don't have a favorite. I loved all of them. So I would like to know
You
what
sensed
your
that I was going to ask.
yeah
You
yeah I
felt it
can't
coming. I was
answer.
about to see, like, I was about to say, which is your favorite?
Okay, look, maybe Matilda, but if I had to choose.
Okay, all right.
So I would like to know what your process is for creating characters and how you tap into their individuality.
Well, I think when you're going to write a multi-point of view ensemble story, you have to think about how all the characters are going to interact together and what they're going to help to bring out in each other. So with Nightbirds, I started with Mathilde, and there was a brief moment in time where I thought she was going to be our only point of view character because her voice came to me very strongly. And I was interested in as I was thinking about her, I knew she was going to be someone who bought into the Nightbird system completely. She's a legacy Nightbird. Her grandmother was a Nightbird. It runs through her family. She sees nothing wrong with the system. And I just felt like in order for us to what I really wanted with the other Nightbirds, I wanted her to be with girls who were going to make her question and challenge the system in new ways that she never had before. I knew that the story and the conflict was going to make her question, but I wanted these girls to push her and challenge her. I love a story where you start with a bunch of characters who have very little in common, except for perhaps, like these girls have nothing in common, but the system that they're in and the magic that they share. But as the story goes on, I love seeing found family and forged friendships. So we had Mathilde, our privileged, spoiled, rich girl who's just, the world is fine, nothing needs to change, everything is fair. And then you have Sayre. So Sayre is a character whose mother was a nightbird, but she fell from grace. She broke the rules of the system and essentially ended up exiled in her own city. So Sayre has grown up in a gritty part of town. She didn't have an easy time of it. She's friends with gang bosses and street urchins and kind of has really had to work for a lot of what she has. She also had to watch her mother die of wasting disease and finds herself in the Nightbird system really reluctantly. It was her mother's dying wish that she become a Nightbird, and their madam, the woman who essentially is like their manager, the manager who helps to run the Nightbird system, has promised her that if she works as a Nightbird for a summer, she can keep all of the earnings and then she can do what she wants. So Sayre comes in already jaded, suspicious, and angry. She's ready to question everything about the Nightbird system. And so you see her and Mathilde butt heads really early on, because even though on paper they have a lot in common, their perspectives could not be more different. And I loved the tension that created. And then you introduce, in the middle of these two characters, Asa. Asa is very much an outsider. She comes from a teeny island on the other side of the Udaean Republic called the Ilish Isles. And everything about this city and this system are new to her. She doesn't speak the language that well. The customs don't make sense to her. She's very nervous and unsure, unlike the other two. And there's the added complexity that in the official religion, the church of my world, it essentially preaches that magic is something holy. It shouldn't be used. It shouldn't be touched. It corrupts you. You will corrupt it. And she was brought up by quite a religious father. And so she has all these moral qualms about her magic and about using her magic. What happens to someone else if I kiss them and give them my magic? Is it going to corrupt them? Is it going to corrupt my soul? And so that's not something the other two girls really have issues with, but Asa forces them to grapple with bigger questions of morality and the law and how it's working and who it's benefiting and who it's hurting. So yes, I essentially built the other two around Mathilde, but I never wanted
Mhm.
them to feel like sidekicks. I wanted them to feel like distinct characters, but also like Mathilde's equal. I wanted them all to feel like they were bringing something different to the table. And like I said, I just loved writing a story where you get to see them grow and to find common ground with each other.
Yeah, they definitely do not feel like sidekicks. And I think that's what, yeah, what I'm saying is they just all feel so like each one is main character energy, you know? So
Oh, yeah.
they do all bring totally different aspects of the world with them. So we get to learn more about that as well. And yeah, they're different perspectives. And it's just, yeah, oh, I love all of them. Love spending time with all of them. So that was perfect. And I do want to touch quickly on the world because Simta, sorry, is so beautiful. Even with the bad stuff, like I really enjoy being in the world. You know, it's not
Oh,
perfect,
good.
but it's filled with so much history and magic, and I'm wondering now, so I was sort of making this connection with you talking about history. I wanted to ask about you know, your process for world building, but with
Mm.
your love of history, does that all tie in together? Do they feed into each other? Can you talk more about
Oh,
that?
yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. So let's see. So I started very much with the Nightbird system and the characters themselves. And then I branched out from there. So I thought about what kind of world are these girls operating in? And I absolutely pulled so much from my travels and from history. So I would describe Simta, the capital city where the action takes place, is a mashup of 1920s New Orleans um, and Renaissance Venice, and with like a teeny skosh of maybe like my hometown of Washington, D.C., and my adopted hometown of Melbourne, Australia. With all the shady laneways and doors that don't look like they should lead anywhere, but actually
Oh yeah.
lead to a very cool bar. Yes. Um, and I wanted, I think when you're world building, you have to think a lot about how do I create a world that feels distinct and fresh, but it's something that the readers can ground themselves in, something that they can
Mhm.
recognize, and something that really makes sense. And so I was thinking a lot about the 1920s in terms of society and culture. You have flapper fashion, you have illicit speakeasies, you have jazz, you have that 1920s energy. It was also a really interesting time for women. So there was the prohibition, which, as we've discussed, I already thought would make a really interesting framework for the magic. Because in my world, you don't just have the kinds of intrinsic magic that the Nightbirds have, but you also have alchemical magic, which can be brewed up from plants and minerals and put into amazing cocktails and balms and all sorts of things. So I was interested in that, but I was also interested in how the 1920s were such an interesting time of transition, specifically for women. The fashion, the laws in America, women had gained the right to vote in 1920. It was earlier in Australia, I believe. Good job, Australia. Although women could not drink in a public bar in parts of Australia until the 1970s. So how about that? But anyway, moving on. Um, yes, so I was thinking a lot about the 1920s, but in terms of the world, I was also thinking about okay, so if this is a world where you have people brewing up alchemicals, I found myself thinking a lot about the Renaissance. Because in a world where you do have magic, I think the impetus to develop technology as we know it wouldn't be, it just, there wouldn't be as much drive to create things like engines. And so my world feels a little bit pre industrial, I think, which it just seemed to suit the kind of story I wanted to tell. And then for the political system, I didn't want to do a monarchy. I wanted to do something a little bit different and more complex. And so I actually reached all the way back to ancient Rome and was thinking about the republic system of Rome when I built my political landscape. And then back to Renaissance Venice again, thinking about how the church and religion fed into politics. And so the wonderful thing about writing fantasy is you can pull from all different eras and mash them together to your heart's content. You just have to make sure that the picture as a whole hangs together, that it all works together. And I never want my reader to stop and go, wait, I don't see how that makes sense in this particular world. I want it to feel seamless, because that's what matters to me. Is I wanted the world to be immersive. I wanted you, even though this city does have gritty parts, there's gang violence, there's lots of stuff happening in the shadows. It's far from a perfect place. But I wanted it to be a place where readers wanted to spend time and never wanted to leave. And you get the glitz and the glamour, but you also get some of the sort of the shadows and the danger as well. So yeah, this was my first second world fantasy, actually. So this was my first my first go round with creating a world from scratch. And I was amazed by, I mean, I knew it would be fun, but I was amazed by how it wasn't easy, but how natural it felt to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think a lot of that is down to how much time I've spent with history and reading. I mean, we don't have to reinvent the wheel with fantasy. There's just history is fascinating and filled with incredible stories and people and systems. Why not pull from it? Because I think when you do, it's just going to make your world feel that much more tangible and real.
And it works so well. Like just listening to you, I thought, oh my God, my mind is blown. But like nothing feels that complicated in the novel, like it all fits
Oh,
together so
good.
seamlessly. And I think also I found traveling around different cities and countries in Europe, and you sort of, I do anyway, like a little walking tour and learn about the really general history. And when you learn about how a city is built using its resources and what's near it and, what's happened, it makes world building a lot easier as well, because you do learn how worlds are built and how,
Yeah,
one
that's
thing feeds
true.
into another. They don't just pop out of nowhere. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's that's also I found really helpful. So
Hmm.
yeah, okay. So after everything that we've spoken about, the magic, the characters, the world, the themes, what are you hoping that readers take away from the story once they finish it?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, certainly the feminist themes, I would love it if readers could feel seen by this book, that they can feel like some of their own frustrations or some of the experiences they've had are there on the page. There's nothing better than reading a book and, reading a sentence and it's just striking you right in the solar plexus, and you think, how
Yeah,
did this writer know that that's exactly what I've thought or felt? So I hope readers get that. I hope they love these girls, these characters, and following their journeys, and that they root for them. And I hope that it sweeps them away. I hope that it's an adventure that is immersive and exciting, but also thought provoking. By the end of the novel, I want you to feel invested in this place and in these characters, and to be excited to see where they go next.
absolutely. Ah, beautifully said. Yeah, totally immerse yourself in this novel. So it is out now. It's been out for a little while now, but if you haven't read it, please pick it up. I think fantasy lovers will absolutely love this one, and history buffs. So a little something for everyone. Kate, thank you so, so much for chatting with me today.
That was my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.